Hello guys, welcome back. In this video, I'll be showing you how to set up and use the Google Drive Service Account plugin in your Bubble application. Now, this plugin allows you to upload and manage files securely using Google Drive through a service account. Instead of relying on direct user authentication, everything is handled via API, which makes it more secure and scalable for backend operation. So, if you want to upload files, organize them into folders, rename them, or delete them, all programmatically, this plugin is perfect for that. And now, before we jump into Bubble, there is an important setup we need to complete on the Google Cloud side. So go ahead and open your browser and head over to the Google Cloud Console website. Once you're on the dashboard, the first thing we need to do is create a new project. At the top of the page, click on the project selector, then click New Project. Give your project a name, and once it's created, make sure it is selected. Now that we have our project, we need to enable the Google Drive API. So open the menu, go to APIs and Services, then click on Library. In the search bar, type Google Drive API, select it, and click Enable. Once that is done, the next step is to create our service account. Still under APIs and Services, go to Credentials and click on Create Credentials and select Service Account. Now give your service account a name. You can leave the other fields as they are and continue. You can skip the optional steps and finish creating the service account. Once it's created, click into the service account. Now go to the key section, click Add Key, and select Create New Key. Choose JSON as the format and download the file. This JSON file contains the credentials we need. So go ahead and open that file. Inside it, you'll find the client email and the private key. These are the two values we'll be using in Bubble. Now let's move into our Bubble application. Open the app where you want to use this plugin. Go to the Plugins tab and click Add Plugins. Search for Google Drive Service Account, install it, and complete the purchase if required. Once the plugin is installed, you'll see fields for configuration. Now take the client email from your JSON file and paste it into the account email field. Then copy the private key. Make sure you copy everything from the beginning to the end and paste it into the private key fields. Once you've done that, your plugin is now connected to your Google Service account. Now let's move to the Design tab and start setting things up. On my page here, I've created a repeating group that will display files coming from Google Drive. To get these files, I'm using the Get Files API VE3 extended. This allows me to fetch all files stored through the service account. Inside the repeating group, I'm displaying details like the file name, file type, file size, and the date the file was created. I've also added buttons for actions like downloading and deleting files. And there's a refresh button that reloads the data so any newly uploaded files can appear immediately. All right, so now let's walk through the different workflow actions you can build with this plugin so you can fully manage your files inside your app. Let's start with creating a file or folder. On my page, I have a section for creating a folder. Inside that group, I have an input field where I enter the folder name, and I also display the folder ID after it's created. Then I have a button labeled Create Folder. Now, when that button is clicked, I run the plugin action Create File. In this action, there are a few fields you need to fill in. You'll set the MIME type depending on what you're creating, then pass the folder name from your input field as the file name, and optionally add a description. Once this runs, the folder is created and you can store or display the returned file ID. Next, let's look at deleting a file or folder. In my delete section, I have an input field where I enter the file ID and a delete button. When the delete button is clicked, I run the plugin action delete file, and all I need to pass in is the file ID from that input. That's all it takes to remove a file or folder from your service account. Now let's move on to uploading a file. And in my upload section, I have a file uploader element, a field to display the file ID, and an upload button. When the upload button is clicked, I run the plugin action upload file base 64. Here, you'll need to provide a few things: the file name, the file type, the MIME type, and the actual file data encoded in base 64. You can get this directly from your file uploader element. You can also add a description if needed. Once the upload is complete, the plugin returns a file ID, which you can use for other actions. Now, if you want to rename a file, Here's how that works. In my rename section, I have an input for the new file name and another input for the file ID, along with a rename button. When that button is clicked, I run the plugin action rename file, passing in the file ID and the new name. Simple and straightforward. Next, moving a file into a folder. In my move section, I have two inputs, one for the file ID and one for the folder ID, and a button labeled Move File to Folder. When this button is clicked, I run the plugin action Add File to Folder. Here I reference the file ID and the folder ID from my inputs, and that moves the file into the specified folder. Now let's look at exporting a file. And in the export section, I have inputs for the file ID and the export MIME type, along with an export button. When the button is clicked, I run the plugin action export file where I pass in the file ID and the MIME type. This allows you to retrieve the file in a specific format. Finally, let's talk about refreshing and displaying files. I have a refresh button on my page, and when it's clicked, I call the plugin's API to fetch all files. The data source for my repeating group is set to get files API v3 extended, which returns the list of files from the service account. Inside the repeating group, I can then display details like file name, type, size, and date created. So every time I click refresh, the latest files are loaded and displayed on the page. On my page, I have a section for managing permissions. Inside that group, I have input fields for file ID, user email, a toggle for send notification, a field for notification text, and a field for permission ID. I also have a get permission button to retrieve permission details. Now, when the give permission button is clicked, I run the plugin action give user permission. In this action, you'll need to fill in a few fields. File ID, the file you want to give access to, user email, the email of the user you want to grant permission to, notification text, optional message for the user. Once this runs, the user is granted permission and a permission ID is generated. Next, let's look at removing a permission. In the remove permission section, I have inputs for file ID and permission ID, along with a remove permission button. When the button is clicked, I run the plugin action remove permission using ID. All you need to do is pass in the file ID and permission ID, and the plugin will remove that permission from the user. Now, let's get permission information. In the get permission section, I have inputs for file ID and permission ID, a get permission button, and display elements to show the returned data. When the button is clicked, I run the plugin action get permission by ID. The plugin will return information like the permission ID and the role, and I display it in my page elements or a custom state. Finally, let's preview how the plugin works. Click Preview in your editor. This allows you to see all the plugin actions in real time. First, go to API v3 and scroll down. Here, you'll see all the folders that have been created. Now, let's add a file. In my Upload section, I have a File Uploader element, a field to display the file ID, and an Upload File button. I can either select a file from my computer or drag a file into the uploader. Once the file is selected, I click Upload File. When the upload is complete, the plugin returns a file ID, which is displayed in the field. This ID is important because we'll use it for giving permissions, removing permissions, and deleting the file. Next, refresh the file list. You can do this by clicking the refresh button. You should now see the newly uploaded file. This confirms that the upload was successful. Finally, let's delete the file. I paste the file ID in the delete section and click Delete File. After clicking refresh, the file is no longer listed, confirming it has been removed. And that's how you handle the core workflows: creating, uploading, renaming, deleting, moving, exporting, and displaying files using the Google Drive Service Account plugin. If you want to explore a full working setup, you can visit the zeroqode website. Click on the For Developers menu, then select Plugins, then search for this plugin. The demo editor will show you everything put together in detail so you can see a complete working example. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us through the chatbot on the zeroqode website or by email at support@zeroqode.com.